Last time we read about this dreadful experience of Savitri, how in her happiness suddenly there's this black cloud of death which comes, and it not only affects her, it seems to affect the whole world. No? And it says that what I want to do is to dissolve everything back into nothingness. Know that you don't really exist. When you know who you are or what you are, you will know that you don't really exist. So we read that that experience leaves Savitri in all her happiness and delight and newfound psychic joy, her inner world just devastated, as if a terrible storm has come and swept everything bare and clean. There's nothing left. All that is left is her soul, which is like a stage in a theater where everything has been cleared away. It's just a completely empty stage where anything could happen. And the soul is waiting. What does that unknown eternal will want now? Then from the heights a greater voice came down, the word that touches the heart and finds the soul, the voice of light after the voice of night, the cry of the abyss drew heaven's reply, a might of storm chased by the might of the sun. O soul, bear not thy kingdom to the foe. Consent to hide thy royalty of bliss, lest time and fate find out its avenues and beat with thunderous knock upon thy gates. Hide while thou canst thy treasure of separate self behind the luminous rampart of thy depths, till of a vaster empire it grows part. But not for self alone. The self is one. Content abide not with one conquered realm. Adventure all to make the whole world thine. To break into greater kingdoms, turn thy force. Fear not to be nothing, that thou mayst be all. Assent to the emptiness of the Supreme, that all in thee may reach its absolute. Accept to be small and human on the earth, interrupting thy newborn divinity, that man may find his utter self in God. If for thy own sake only thou hast come, an immortal spirit into the mortal's world, to found thy luminous kingdom in God's dark, in the inconscience realm, one shining star, one door in the ignorance opened upon light. Why hadst thou any need to come at all? Thou hast come down into a struggling world to aid a blind and suffering mortal race, to open to light the eyes that could not see, to bring down bliss into the heart of grief, to make thy life a bridge twixt earth and heaven. If thou wouldst save the toiling universe, the vast universal suffering feel as thine. Thou must bear the sorrow that thou claimst to heal. The day bringer must walk in darkest night. He who would save the world must share its pain. If he knows not grief, how shall he find grief's cure? If far he walks above mortality's head, how shall the mortal reach that too high path? If one of theirs they see scale heaven's peaks, men then can hope to learn that Titan climb. God must be born on earth and be as man, that man, being human, may grow even as God. You will start, Rosa? Yes.
Then from the highest greater voice came down the word that touched the heart and find the soul, the voice of light after the voice of night, the cry of the abyss drew heaven's reply, a might of stone chased by the might of the sun.
Yes. So in what we read last week, Savitri has heard this voice of darkness and death, claiming to be the origin and end of everything. That has a devastating effect on her happiness. It lays waste her inner world. But then into that emptiness comes from above a greater voice, And that greater voice is the voice that touches the heart and goes straight to the soul, speaks to the soul. And this is the voice of light. After that dreadful voice of night, there comes the voice of light. And it's as if that cry of darkness coming from the abyss, from the depths, has called a reply from the heights. There comes the voice of the darkness, but then it's answered by a greater voice, a voice that speaks to the soul. So that first voice was like a dreadful storm, black, dark, threatening, bringing death and destruction. But it's as if that storm gets just dissolved, chased away by the power of light, by the power of the sun.
The word drew, whether it pulls or goes back?
It pulls it.
Pulls.
Yes. It's as if that call from the abyss, that complaint and that threatening voice, it attracts a higher reply from heaven. Dhanalakshmi, have you got the place?
Yeah. O soul, bear not thy kingdom to the foe. Consent to hide thy royalty of bliss, lest time and fate find out its avenues and beat with thunderous knock upon thy gates.
It's as if this new voice of light is giving her a kind of warning or advice. She had been feeling so happy, and that happiness was spreading through all the world around her, and she was seeing everything lit up by that light of her soul realization, of uniting with her source. But now she's being warned that that's a wonderful realization you've had, but don't expose it, hide it. Don't show it, because there are hostile forces, there are enemies. A foe is the enemy. It's the one that wants to destroy your realization. So keep it quiet and secret within yourself. Hide this royalty of bliss. Now you feel this bliss and this delight, but keep it within yourself. Because otherwise, time, the passage of time which dissolves things, and fate, disaster, will find the way to that kingdom of bliss. Keep it secret. And they'll come and attack you. They'll beat with thunderous knock upon your gates. You've got your secret place there. They will find it out. Martin.
Hide, my low hands, thy treasure of separate self, behind the luminous rampart of thy depths, till of a vaster empire it grows taut.
Yes. So what you have found now is the truth and the treasure of your true individuality, your separate self. But he says, keep that hidden as long as you can. Keep it hidden behind the luminous ramparts of thy depths. Ramparts are protective walls around a fortress. And these are luminous ramparts. They're full of light. These are the walls of the inner being, the deeper parts of herself. So he says, keep it hidden, protected behind those ramparts, until your separate self, as if like a little kingdom, becomes part of a greater empire. And then it will be stronger also, by joining itself to a greater empire of light. Your separate self, which has had this realization, it will become much stronger. But then something else is expressed, Bhavana.
But not for self alone, the self is one. Content abide not with one conquered realm. Adventure all to make the whole world thine. To break into greater kingdoms, turn thy force.
Yes. So he says, you've had this realization of the true self. But that's not just for you. It's not just for your individual benefits. So don't remain content with just that individual realization. That's only one conquered realm, one conquered kingdom. That's only one camp of God pitched in human time. That's what we read, no? He says, adventure all, risk everything to make the whole world yours. He uses this term, thine, no? The second person singular. You can break into greater kingdoms than just this little limited kingdom of yourself. So now turn your strength to conquer those other kingdoms. And how are you to do this?
This can be compared with the individual moksha.
Well, what she experienced was not exactly what we call moksha. It is what in Aurobindo's yoga we call the psychic realization, where we realize oneness with the divine source and being. So that's a very, very powerful. And she not only experienced it inwardly, there was a transformation also of the nature. All the centers were transformed. So moksha is the liberation from ignorance. It's that she will have to do later on. So what is the first step? Mila, you would read?
Fear not to be nothing, that thou mayest be all. Ascend to the emptiness of the Supreme, that all in thee may reach its absolute.
Yes. So the voice tells her, don't be afraid to lose everything. This threatening experience, it's as if it has emptied everything. It's left her like an empty stage. And it says, don't worry about that. Don't worry about being empty, because that emptiness can be filled with everything, with the all, with the whole universe. So it says, accept, agree. To assent means to say yes. Accept the emptiness of the Supreme. There's an aspect of transcendence which seems to be absolutely without any qualities. It's just bare, empty, void. Assent to the emptiness of the Supreme, that everything in you, every aspect and part and level of your being may reach its absolute, its utmost fulfillment. And it's going to tell, the voice is going to tell her how that can happen. Sergei.
Accept to be small and human on the earth, interrupting thy newborn divinity, that man may find his utter self in God.
So Savitri has discovered her inner divinity. But he tells her, just accept to be like any ordinary human being, small and human on the earth. Interrupt that newborn divinity that you've discovered in yourself. You do that for the sake of the whole human race. You do that so that man, humanity, may find his utter self in God. This will be a contribution to the self-discovery of the whole human race. And that is what she has come for, really. It is reminding her that she's not here just to have an individual realization. She has come with a purpose and a mission. Lady at the back, would you like to read?
Here the interrupting is something making an obstacle. It is not like that.
It means you don't have to now enjoy all that newborn divinity. You set it aside, you interrupt it for some time.
Okay.
It'll come back to you in another form.
Okay.
Yes? And you do this so that humanity can be realized, not only just you. Yes? You will read?
If for thy own sake only thou hast come, and in mortal spirit into the mortal's world.
Continue. Yeah.
To found thy luminous kingdom in God's dark, in the inconscience realm, one shining star, one door in the ignorance opened upon light. Why has thou any need to come at all?
Let's look at this interesting sentence. If you've come into this human world for your own sake, for your own benefit, if you have come as an immortal spirit that is not subject to death, you have come here into this material world which is ruled by death, the mortal's world, and you have come here to found your own kingdom of light in this dark world that God has created, this world which is dark because it is the realm, it is the country of the inconscient. It's like the infinite force without consciousness. That is from what our material world seems to have begun. So if you have come like that, just like one shining star into the darkness, if you've come just to open one individual door in the ignorance, in this human state of consciousness, just open one door into the light, what was the need of you coming at all? You were already immortal and full of light and consciousness and bliss. Why would you come just to have an individual human realization? You have come for a bigger purpose than that. You will read? Okay, Andres.
Thou hast come down into a struggling world to aid the blind and suffering mortal race, to open, to light the eyes that could not see, to bring down bliss into the heart of grief, to make thy life a bridge twixt earth and heaven. If thou wouldst save the toiling universe, the vast universal suffering feel as thine, thou must bear the sorrow of thou claimest to feel. The daybringer must walk in darkest night.
Thank you. Yes. So here again we've got these forms of thy, thou. Yeah? We don't use these forms in ordinary English speech or even in writing normally, only in poetry we find these forms, but they are useful because this is the second person singular. In speech we are always using the plural form, you, as if we were speaking to more than one person. But here Sri Aurobindo can make it very, very clear that this voice is speaking directly to Savitri herself. So it tells her, you have come down from your immortal realm into this struggling world. You have come to help, to aid this blind and suffering mortal race, the whole of humanity, who can't see very well. We are not full of knowledge. We have only a partial knowledge. We are blind. And because we are blind, we suffer. And we are subject to death. We are mortal. And you have come here to open those eyes, those blind eyes that cannot see, to the light of the higher knowledge, the higher consciousness and bliss. You have come to bring bliss, to bring ananda into these suffering hearts, this heart of grief. You have come here as a human being to make your life like a bridge, a connection between this material earth, which is going through this difficult process of evolution, and those higher realms where everything is already perfect in its own way. So if that is what you want to do, he says, if thou wouldst, if you want to save the toiling universe, the universe that's making such an effort and going through so much pain and suffering in order to develop further, to evolve further, you are going to have to feel fully in yourself the vast universal suffering, all the suffering that's going on in the whole universe, not only on the earth. You are going to have to bear the sorrow that you came, that you claimed, that you want to heal. You think that you can heal it. So you are going to have to bear it first. Because the day bringer, actually the day bringer is the morning star. You know, it's that first little star, it's usually Mercury, that comes above the horizon first. But if we think of that star as a being, it is the one that brings the day behind it. That star itself has to move in darkest night. So he's comparing Savitri herself to the day bringer. She's bringing the light, but in order to do that, she has to pass through the darkness. Joella.
He who would save the world must share its pain. If he knows not grief, how shall he find grief's cure? If far he walks above mortality's head, how shall the mortal reach that too high path?
Yes, this is the thing, no? He who wishes to save the world, has to share its pain. If he doesn't share it, if he doesn't know what the suffering is and where it comes from, how can he find the cure for it? And if he's walking on some high level, immune and untouched by all the difficulties that human beings suffer, no? How will ordinary human beings, mortals like us, how will they be able to reach that high path? Aurobindo used to have this argument with one of his disciples in particular, who they had quite a correspondence going, and this person used to say, "But you are an avatar. You are divine. For you it's easy." And Sri Aurobindo said, "It's not like that at all. I wasn't born an avatar. I had to pass through all the difficulties, and I've passed through them so that you can see that it's possible for you too to follow this path. What's the use of me being high up there and perfect? The idea is to uplift the whole of humanity." So, would you read?
If one of their friends they see a scale having speed, men they can hope to learn that they can climb.
Yes, read the next two lines as well.
God must be born on earth and be as a man. That man being human may grow even as a God.
So this is something that's easy to remember. No? Yeah? If we see somebody who is like us, who's a human being as we are, if we see them making great spiritual achievements, then we can hope that it's possible for us also to learn to reach those spiritual heights. But to help that to happen, the divine being must take birth on earth as a human being, be just like us, so that we, being the way we are, humans, can grow to be divine as God is divine. Sri Aurobindo says this over and over and over again in this poem. Yes. Yes. Yeah. So if a higher being has come with the intention of helping in that process of evolution, he has to be one with the world. That's what comes next. Suresh, yes, Andres.
But this is not the case of other avatars like Krishna or Jesus. Well, Buddha, yes, he climbed, but Jesus or Krishna didn't do any effort.
We don't know. Now we think of them as avatars, but for example with Christ we know that he had to suffer terribly. He knew that he's going to be killed, and he wanted that human warmth. He wanted his disciples to stay awake with him, and even this, they couldn't do it. They fell asleep, left him all alone with his suffering, and he prayed to the Lord. He said, if it's possible to take this cup away from me, please do it. No, but he had to go through that terrible suffering. Of course, Christ is particularly the avatar of human suffering, we can say. Krishna comes in a different way, but if we read the stories of Krishna, not these fantastic stories about his childhood in Vrindavan, but the Krishna that we see in the Mahabharata, he was born into a princely family, but the people all around him, all the other kings and aristocrats, they thought he's just a worthless fellow, They didn't recognize his divinity at all. And even Arjuna, who was closest to him, there's a special moment in the Gita when he really sees Krishna's divinity. And then he's trembling. He said, all this time I've been playing with you like a playful fellow, and see what a great being you are. So in some way they have come like human beings. But of course, because of that great inner consciousness, they have some inner strength that we have to find in ourselves. We have the potential of that strength and light and realization. And the experiences we have in our lives are meant to help us to find that. That's why life is not always easy and pleasant. We have to go to share the universal suffering in order to find our divine possibilities. Is it okay, Andras? You can accept this?
Yes, I understand.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Suresh, would you read?
He who saved the world must be one with the world. All suffering things contained in his God's space,
and bear
the grief and joy of all that lives.
Yes, the one who comes as a savior, who wants to save the world, must be one with the world. He can't keep himself separate and happy in his own inner divinity. He has to be able to be open to the whole world. He must be able to hold, to contain all suffering things in his heart's space. It's difficult for us to imagine that we can ever do that. You know? But again, both Sri Aurobindo and Mother have spoken about this experience of being aware of all the suffering of the world, the heart expanding enough to be able to feel and contain all that. Be able to bear not only the grief, but also the joy of everything that lives. You will read?
All these things have been told by Narada also.
This came also in book 6 at more length, yes, about the Saviour. And of course he was preparing Savitri that one day you are going to have to face all this. Yes. Yes, please.
The soul must be wider than the universe and feel eternity as its very start, rejecting the moment's personality, know itself older than the birth of time, creation an incident in its consciousness, Arcturus and Belphegor, brains of fire, circling in a corner of its boundless self. The world's destruction, a small transient storm in the calm infinity it has become.
So this is a very crucial sentence. This is actually giving the theme now of this, the rest of this book. If you are to fulfill your mission, Savitri, like everyone else who comes with a similar mission, your soul must become vaster than this whole universe. It must it must be able to feel that its whole substance and nature is eternity, transcendent, beyond space and time. So in order to do that, this little personality, this limited sense of self, has to be rejected. It has to be thrown away so that the soul can know that it is older than the birth of time, that our true individuality has existed before this particular creation that we are now playing a small part in, before it was ever thought of. There's a talk of the mother where one of the students of the ashram, teenagers of the ashram, asked the mother about this psychic realization that we saw described in the last canto. And she said, is that psychic being our true individuality? And when I read that question, I thought that mother is going to answer yes, but she didn't. She said no. She explained that this soul personality, which is the center of our, we can say, of our innermost being, around which our whole nature organizes itself. It's an entity which passes from life to life. It isn't determined by the body, but it is something that is growing and developing in evolution, in time. But it can do that only because at its center there is this spark of pure divinity which has been born into this material universe, which is eternal and infinite and carries a particular quality and capacity and potentiality of the supreme and eternal transcendent being, which is its svabhava, its true self-being. And that is what determines our growth as individuals through all the many, many different roles that we play, the lives that we experience in the whole course of development. So it says that the Savior, the one who comes, will have to widen his being so that the creation of this universe is just an incident, a small happening in his own consciousness. And that these remote galaxies, or whatever they are, Arcturus, it's a star in the sky. That's a familiar name. But Aurobindo uses this name Belphegor, and he uses it not only here, he uses it somewhere else as well. But people don't know which star he's referring to exactly. But they sound beautiful together, no? Arcturus and Belphegor. They are just little grains of fire circling in a corner of the boundless self of your own soul. So if this whole world is destroyed, the world's destruction is just a small passing storm in the calm infinity which that self has become. So that is what Savitri needs to do, and the voice will tell her how to do that. But I think I would like to stop there today, unless anybody has some questions.
I have a very mundane question.
Yes, Patricia.
Back on page 536, I don't have the line numbers. Hide while thou canst. Does your edition say while?
Whilst.
Mine does too. Okay.
Yeah. Means the same thing, you know.
Yes, I didn't hear you correctly.
Yes, perhaps I didn't say it correctly.
I don't know, but it's,
Hide whilst thou canst thy treasure of separate self. As long as you can, keep it secret within you. But at the same time, you have to go on doing this inner work. You are going to have to, instead of just being a happy ray of sunlight lighting up the little world around you, you're going to have to go on with this inner work of widening. And this will be described. A way is shown to Savitri, and in the rest of the canto, we see how she follows this path step by step. It's actually very, very interesting from the point of view of sadhana, particularly from the point of view of silencing the mind to the extent of moksha, of completely losing the sense of separate self, of individual, first the loss of the ego, and then the loss of the sense of separate self altogether. And that brings her somehow to the edge of a kind of extinction, as if she could just disappear altogether. But she doesn't disappear. There's something that is left there. And she can only wait to see what will happen. Am I supposed to merge now into this vastness? Or what? So, it's very, very interesting.
In line 165, alone gave the meaning of found, to found the luminous.
Well, Mother founded a city. To found, to start, to inaugurate, or base. So is that what you have come for? To just like you might found a city or a kingdom? Is it clear? It's not. It's a bit different from finding. To find is one thing, but to found is something else. Yeah.
It's a verb.
It's a verb, and the form is a little bit different from the verb to find. We say, Mother founded Auroville. Not that she found Auroville. She didn't found it. She had to create it.
And founder relates to this word.
What?
Founder and foundation.
Yes, yes. Yes. Something has been founded here. And when we want to build a house, we have to make a foundation first, a base. So let's read these lines together, starting on line 141.
Then from the heights a greater voice came down, the word that touches the heart and finds the soul, the voice of light after the voice of night. The cry of the abyss drew heaven's reply, a might of storm chased by the might of the sun. O soul, bear not thy kingdom to the foe. Consent to hide thy royalty of bliss, lest time and fate find out its avenues and beat with thunderous knock upon thy gates. Hide while thou canst thy treasure of separate self behind the luminous rampart of thy depths, till of a vaster empire it grows part. But not for self alone the self is one. Content abide not with one conquered realm. Adventure all to make the whole world thine. To break into greater kingdoms turn thy force. Fear not to be nothing, that thou mayst be all. Assent to the emptiness of the Supreme, that all in thee may reach its absolute. Accept to be small and human on the earth, interrupting thy newborn divinity, that man may find his utter self in God. If for thy own sake only thou hast come, an immortal spirit into the mortal's world, to found thy luminous kingdom in God's dark, in the inconscience realm one shining star, one door in the ignorance opened upon light. Why hadst thou any need to come at all? Thou hast come down into a struggling world to aid a blind and suffering mortal race, to open to light the eyes that could not see, to bring down bliss into the heart of grief, to make thy life a bridge twixt earth and heaven. If thou wouldst save the toiling universe, the vast universal suffering feel as thine, thou must bear the sorrow that thou claimst to heal. The day-bringer must walk in darkest night. He who would save the world must share its pain. If he knows not grief, how shall he find grief's cure? If far he walks above mortality's head, how shall the mortal reach that too high path? If one of theirs they see scale heaven's peaks, men then can hope to learn that Titan climb. God must be born on earth and be as man, that man, being human, may grow even as God. He who would save the world must be one with the world. All suffering things contain in his heart's space, and bear the grief and joy of all that lives. His soul must be wider than the universe, and feel eternity as its very stuff, rejecting the moment's personality, know itself older than the birth of time, creation an incident in its consciousness, Arcturus and Belphegor, grains of fire circling in a corner of its boundless self. The world's destruction, a small transient storm, in the calm infinity it has become.